Lawmakers are urging the Pentagon to release the full video of a so-called double-tap strike on a suspected drug boat. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the Pentagon is, quote, reviewing the process of releasing full clips of the September strike. Some of the officials who have seen that footage say it shows a possible war crime. Others claim it proves the strike was justified.
I think it's really important that people see what it looks like when the full force of the United States military is turned on two guys who are clinging to a piece of wood and about to go under, just so that they have sort of a visceral feel for what it is that we're doing.
It doesn't really matter what they were trying to do. What matters is that they were not in a shipwreck state, distressed, dog paddling in the water at all. And therefore, that boat, its cargo, and those drug traffickers remained valid targets.
I want to bring in Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster. He's a CBS News foreign policy and national security contributor who served as national security advisor in the first Trump administration. General, always good to see you.
Hey, Vlad, great to be with you.
All right. So this weekend, the defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, said he, quote, fully supports that strike and, quote, would have made the same call himself, but wouldn't commit to publishing the video. If the video is ever released and the American people have a chance to see it with their own eyes, what do you think the reaction will be to seeing two men clinging to a piece of wood after a first strike and then killed by a second strike? I mean, on the face of it, without having the video, it sounds like these unarmed individuals would at least deserve to be taken into custody. But you tell me, you're a former national security advisor. You spent, many decades in the U.S. Army. What would you say to the American people who would see this video?
Hey, really, what is at stake here in terms of, or the way to think about it, I think, Vlad, is just war theory, jus in bello, that goes back to Thomas Aquinas, were these combatants? So there's a question of discrimination, between combatants, non-combatants. And, the clips that, that our viewers just saw, really allude to that fact. Are they still combatants or non-combatants? But, I think what's going to be even more important than the film, Vlad, is just more information overall. I think what people have are really three questions in mind. Is this a just cause? And we should learn more about, the brutality of these organizations. These really are narco-terrorist organizations, Vlad. I mean, what they do to people, the way they torture them, the way they gain control of territory, and of course, the degree to which they're poisoning our society with the narcotics. But we should hear more about that. The case, right, for this being, a just cause by designating these groups as narco-terrorist organizations. And then there's the question of right authority. Does the president, under Article 2, as authorities in the Constitution, what is the legal case, for the president to be able to take this action without the approval of Congress in particular? And then, of course, what we're talking about, the issue of discrimination. So what I would like to see is a heck of a lot more information and engagement. And I think what we're starting to see is Congress exerting their authorities under Article 1 to say, hey, we need to learn about these three aspects of whether this is a just war in terms of the authorities, the cause, but also how it's being conducted.
Yeah, those are really important questions. I want to play for you, General, and for our viewers, a soundbite of CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano, who spoke with the family of a Colombian fisherman who was killed in a different strike. Let's play that.
You remember the last time he went out fishing?
Sí, salió a pescar, dijo, voy a pescar, y de ahí no venido más.
He never came back.
No, la prensa que dice que son él.
They said it was him, but there's no proof or even a body. Nobody knows if it's him.
So these are operations where the victims' families don't even have bodies to identify. How long can the Pentagon, I guess, justify withholding videos of these strikes? I guess the question in general is, if this is a war, what is the role of Congress here? And if this is a war, should the administration just be more transparent with the American people about how it's conducting it?
It should be a heck of a lot more transparent. I'm sure everybody's going to say that they were fishermen in these strikes too, but I think
that
what
part,
this,
yes.
What this shows you, Vlad, is that is that there needs to be sort of more transparency in this, and I know that there's concerns typically about sources and methods. Maybe you're going to expose your human intelligence network or the way that you're identifying these as what the administration is now calling narco terrorists and so forth. But hey, we're a democracy, and the American people have a say in how we're governed, and especially in issues that involve life and death, the taking of life. So I think the main point is, hey, we need a heck of a lot more transparency. And I think the American people need to learn more about these specific organizations, these narcotics trafficking organizations, and how they're harming our citizens. As I mentioned, the main justification, for these acts of war.
General, before you go, I'm curious because the defense secretary says that the decisions that were made in the heat of battle by the admiral who was responsible for carrying out this operation was done correctly. But when he's asked if he specifically gave an order to kill everyone, he either denies or he turns to pointing out that the commander on the ground made the right decision. Why not just say, if he doesn't have a problem with it and if he thinks it's a legal order, that he did give that order to carry out that second strike?
Well, there is a chain of command. And I think, I'll tell you, Vlad, this whole idea of like watching this, in Washington, I mean, I think really, it's gotten to the point where, I think you don't really want the Secretary of Defense, making tactical calls. I mean, there should be trust up and down the chain of command. You should be given the mission with confidence that you can accomplish the mission as a subordinate commander, in this case, a special operations commander. And then you also have to have confidence, that they're going to execute those orders, lawfully and ethically. And so, I just think that, this whole watching these strikes, it's just, I never saw it as productive or maybe even, certainly not necessary.
Yeah, it's such an excellent point, General, and I'm so glad you're here to make that point, because you're right. If perhaps the defense secretary's posture hadn't been and hasn't been what it has, what he has said in front of cameras over the course of his term, perhaps the notion that a military commander carrying out a strike or doing anything, those decisions would be made based on what the commander sees, based on the experience, and based on what he knows to be lawful and unlawful. Except, I guess the problem now for a lot of people is you've got the defense secretary in front of cameras constantly talking about warfighters and the kind of decisions he wants to make and the kind of decisions the president expects him to make. And that, I guess, has perhaps clouded the way we see this. In other words, Washington is very present in the way that it describes what is happening on the ground, whereas, as you know, military commanders are just doing their job.
Well, and this is what's important, because we operate under mission orders, right? And Vlad, so again, this is why we need more of the context. Hey, what is the mission? Is the mission to prevent narcotics trafficking organizations, from poisoning the American people, and to do that so by not only interdicting but dissuading the use of these fishing vessels? Or is it to drive the funding to Maduro? Is this about the Maduro regime and weakening the Maduro regime? We need to hear more, about what is the mission, instead of so much about the tactics that are being employed.
Yeah, I mean, excellent point. Going back to my Army cadet days, I just recall the first lessons we learned was that when you make a decision, the people above you have empowered you to make that decision and expect you to make the right one. Really interesting. General, always good to have you, sir. Thank you very much, as always.
Hey, Vlad, great to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.